The Boy Who Vanished in the Dark. Beginning. In a small mountainous town in America called Winterwood, winters were long and snow was always deep. Back in 1990s, life in the town was quiet and people knew each other well. But in January of 1996, something changed. That evening, 9-year-old Alex Miller didn't return home from school. His mother, Sarah Miller, realized he was missing around 6 o'clock. She immediately called neighbors and then the police. Since it was a small town, everyone came together to search for the boy. The search. The next morning, near the edge of the forest close to the middle school, they found a piece of Alex's red jacket. But the boy himself was nowhere to be found. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle. The edge of the jacket looked strange, as if burned by fire. No one could explain it. They searched for 7 days. Nothing was found. Eventually, the official search was called off. The town was filled with unease and fear. Sarah never gave up hope. Every day, she cleaned her son's room and waited for him to come home. 20 years later, in 2020, 19-year-old Emma Scott, a journalism student at the local college, found an old newspaper article in the archive titled The Disappearance of Alex Miller. Curious, she decided to investigate the case. She met Sarah and saw that the hope in her eyes still hadn't faded. Emma learned about an old mine outside the town, a place surrounded by dark legends and stories of missing people. She decided to explore it with her friend Jake, who was a videographer. The night truth emerges. They entered the mine late at night. No one was supposed to go in there, but Emma held a camera, determined to film everything. Inside, they found old children's toys, broken dishes, and a strange chill in the air. Then, something unexpected happened. A hidden door in the wall creaked open. Inside was a man, around 30 years old, sitting quietly in the dark. He looked up and asked, "Emma, who are you?" She replied, "I'm Alex." He explained that he'd been trapped in a different dimension inside the mine since he was 9. Time flowed differently there. On the night he vanished, a dark figure had taken him, a shadowy entity that fed on fear. To survive, Alex was forced to serve that dark figure. But he discovered that he could only return to the real world if someone willingly entered the mine again. Emma had unknowingly become his only chance to escape. She decided to help him. But just as they tried to leave, the shadow appeared. The Boy Who Vanished in the Dark. Part 2. The Return. Emma froze. The air inside the mine suddenly turned icy, and the faint glow of her flashlight began to flicker. A low, humming sound echoed through the cavern, as if the walls themselves were breathing. Behind them, a dark mist slithered from the hidden corridor. Alex grabbed her arm. "Don't move," he whispered. "It knows you're here." Emma looked into his eyes. They were filled with both fear and urgency. The eyes of a boy who had once been innocent, now aged by terror. From the shadows emerged a tall, cloaked figure, faceless, shifting like smoke. The shadow. Its presence sucked the light from the air. Jake, standing behind the camera, stumbled back. "What is that?" he gasped. "It's what took me," Alex said, "and it doesn't want me to leave." The shadow spoke without a mouth. Its voice echoed in their minds. "You broke the silence, Emma. He belongs to me. You all do now." Emma's heart pounded. She had 2 options: run and leave Alex, or fight something no one had ever seen and live to tell. But she remembered Sarah's eyes, a mother who never gave up. Emma couldn't either. "What if we don't belong to anyone?" she said aloud. "What if we choose our own fate?" She grabbed Alex's hand and ran. Jake followed, camera swinging wildly. The mine shook as the shadow let out a piercing screech. Tunnels began to collapse. Rocks fell. They sprinted through the narrow passageways, Alex guiding them. He still remembered the paths, even after 20 years in the dark. Suddenly, a wall of stone blocked their path. "It's sealed," Alex said, panicked. "That wasn't here before." Emma turned to face the darkness behind them. The shadow was getting closer. Its form twisted into horrifying shapes. Long arms, screaming faces, clawed hands. Jake dropped the camera and pulled a flare from his backpack. He lit it and threw it toward the shadow. The flare exploded in red light, momentarily forcing the darkness to retreat. "Go!" Jake yelled. Emma spotted a narrow crack in the rock, just enough for a small person to squeeze through. She pushed Alex toward it. You first. Alex hesitated, then crawled through. Emma followed, and Jake dived in after them just as the tunnel behind them collapsed completely. Outside, they burst into the cold night air, collapsing in the snow. For a moment, none of them spoke. The mine was silent again, as if nothing had happened. The camera was left behind, buried under tons of rock. Emma looked at Alex. You're safe now. But Alex shook his head. It's not over. That thing, it followed us. He pointed at the tree lean. In the distance, two faint, glowing eyes watched them from the darkness. Whispers in the woods. Alex stayed at Emma's house that night, curled up on the couch like someone who hadn't known comfort in years. He barely spoke, just stared at the window, as if the forest was still calling to him. Emma couldn't sleep. She dug deeper into the town's history and discovered something chilling. Every 20 years, a child had gone missing near the mine. 1956, 1976, 1996, and now 2020. Jake rewatched the video footage from the camera before the collapse. He paused at one frame, a blurry, terrifying outline of the shadow, staring straight into the lens. They knew the creature was real, but how many others in town believed the legend? Part 4. The Town That Forgot. Emma and Jake tried to speak to the police, but they were met with laughter. You're saying a shadow kidnapped a kid 20 years ago and brought him back now. But when they showed Alex's hospital records, fingerprints, and birth certificate, the officers went silent. It was him. Somehow, impossibly, it really was. Still, the sheriff warned. Don't stir fear in this town, Emma. Let sleeping ghosts lie. But ghosts don't sleep, especially not hungry ones. Part 5. The Journal of Elias Gray. Alex remembered an old man in the dimension he was trapped in. Elias Gray, a miner who vanished in 1956. Elias had kept a journal, one made of bark and strange paper. Alex had smuggled it out when they escaped. The journal contained drawings of the shadow, strange symbols, and one warning repeated over and over. The shadow must feed. If no child is taken, it will come for the town. Emma realized the truth. The town hadn't just forgotten. It had sacrificed children to stay safe. Part 6. The Pact. Emma confronted Mayor Harold Keene, who had been a teenager in 1996. His face paled when she mentioned Elias Gray. That name should never be spoken, he whispered. Under pressure, he revealed the truth. In 1956, the town's founders discovered a curse deep inside the mine. A dark entity demanded a child every 20 years in exchange for peace and prosperity. And they agreed. Emma was sickened. The town had been choosing silence over justice for decades. But now, with Alex free, the cycle was broken, and the shadow was angry. Part 7. A Town on Edge. The townspeople began seeing things. Shadows darting between houses, lights flickering, animals going missing. Emma warned them, held a town meeting, and showed footage of the creature. But many still refused to believe until the attacks began. First, a local boy disappeared near the school. Then an elderly man was found catatonic in the woods, eyes wide open, mouth whispering, "It's back. It's back." The town went into lockdown. But you can't hide from something that lives in the dark. Part 8. Into the depths again. Emma, Alex, and Jake decided to go back into the mine. This time armed with lights, symbols from Elias's journal, and a plan to end the curse. They weren't alone. A few brave locals joined them, including Marcus, a retired firefighter, and Lena, a folklore professor who had long suspected the truth. As they descended, the mine began to groan, and their lights dimmed. The shadow knew they were coming. In the deepest chamber, they found a black pool, the source, and within it, the faces of the children lost, screaming silently. Alex stepped forward. "It's me you want. Let them go." Part 9. The Sacrifice. The shadow emerged, larger, more twisted than ever before. It offered a deal. Take Alex again, and the town would be spared for another 20 years. Alex was ready to accept, but Emma screamed, "No." Instead, Lena began reading from Elias's journal, a banishment ritual written in an ancient, nearly forgotten language. The shadow shrieked, shaking the mine. It lashed out, injuring Jake and nearly crushing Marcus. But Emma and Lena stood firm, chanting louder. Suddenly, light burst from the pages, and the pool began to boil. The shadow screamed one final time and vanished. Part 10. Dawn in Winterwood. They emerged at sunrise. Alex fell to his knees in the snow. He was finally free. The mine collapsed completely, sealing away the evil forever. The town, though shaken, began to heal. Emma wrote a full report, exposing the hidden truth, and the town chose never to keep secrets again. Alex was legally reinstated as a citizen, given a new home, and began to recover. Emma and Jake became known as the heroes of Winterwood, though they both knew they were just lucky to survive. Still, sometimes at night, Emma dreams of the mine, and once, she swears she heard a voice whisper through the wind, "I'm not gone, only waiting." The shadows we carry. Winterwood seemed peaceful again, but peace, as Emma had learned, was often just silence before another scream. Alex tried to adjust to a world that had moved on without him. The internet, smartphones, social media, it overwhelmed him. Yet his eyes always drifted to dark corners, windows without curtains, and hallways without lights. Something in him knew. Evil does not die easily. One evening, he sat at the window of his new room, watching the woods. The wind rustled the trees, but there were no animals, no birds, just stillness. Then he saw it, a shape, standing just beyond the tree line. Tall, silent, watching. He blinked. It was gone, but the feeling remained. Part 12. I'm off school, working with Lena to catalog Elias Gray's journal. Some of the pages had gone blank after the banishment. Others had begun to change. Symbols rearranged themselves. New entries appeared in ink she hadn't written. One page read, "The roots remain. You severed the branch, not the tree." Emma showed it to Jake. He had been quieter since the mine. His shoulder bore a scar from the shadow's lash, one that hadn't fully healed. "I don't think we ended it," Jake said. "We just made it angry." Part 13. The Night House. Reports began again. A farmer outside town claimed his barn was torn open by something massive. His livestock vanished without a trace. He refused to sleep in his own house now. Emma, Alex, and Jake drove out to visit. The barn was shattered, not by explosion or weather, but from the inside. Claw marks lined the wooden beams, 3 thick gouges, as if made by a giant hand. Inside the house, the air was stale, cold. Then they found it, scrawled on the mirror in soot. "I remember." Alex backed away. "I've seen this before," he whispered. "It used to do this to the others, before they vanished." Part 14. The Ring of Ash. Lena discovered a legend deep in native archives about a creature called Nulku, the hunger without skin. According to the tale, it did not live in the world, but beneath it, and fed on pain, fear, and sacrifice. One of the only ways to bind it permanently was to create a ring of ash, a sacred circle burned into the earth, using the remains of those it had taken, along with an artifact from its origin. Emma and Alex were stunned. What was the creature's origin? And where could they find remains of those it had consumed? Then Alex remembered something. Before Elias died in the Shadow Realm, he gave Alex a small stone medallion. The surface was black as obsidian, but pulsed with warmth. It might be the key. Part 15. Grave of the Mine. The team returned to the collapsed mine with heavy tools. They were joined by Marcus, now with a team of construction workers. They didn't go in, no one would dare, but Emma directed them to dig around the outskirts. Beneath a century-old pine, they found something buried. Dozens of small bones. Children's bones. The truth hit hard. The shadow had not just kidnapped the children. It had consumed them, leaving only fragments behind. The bones were buried in silence. No family ever knew. But now they had names. And a purpose. Emma took the medallion, the bones, and Elias's journal. They would make the Ring of Ash. The final trap. Part 16. The First Haunting. That night, Alex had a dream. He was in the mine again. Not as a child, but as he was now. But everything was reversed. He could hear his own mother's voice calling to him from the darkness. Then the shadow appeared, but this time it had his face. "You brought me back," it said. "You let them believe I was gone, but I was always inside you." Alex awoke, gasping, sweat pouring down his face. In the corner of his room, there was ash, in the shape of a footprint. Part 17, Fire and Fog. Emma and the group chose the site for the ritual, a meadow on the edge of the forest, once home to an abandoned chapel. It had been destroyed in 1956, the year the first child vanished. They built the ring of ash. They placed the medallion at the center. The sky grew overcast as they worked. As the final word from Elias's banishment chant was spoken, the ground shook. Trees bent. Animals ran from the forest in droves. From the center of the ring, smoke began to rise, not black, but dark red, like old blood turned to vapor. Then a scream echoed across the town. Hundreds heard it. The shadow had awakened. Part 18, The Possession. The next day, Jake didn't show up at the cabin. Emma found him wandering barefoot on the highway, mumbling nonsense, eyes gray and distant. He screamed when she touched him. Back at the hospital, Tess found nothing wrong, but Jake's body was ice cold. Alex looked into his eyes and whispered, "It's in him." The shadow had found a new host, one that walked freely in daylight, and it wanted vengeance. Part 19, The Fire Within. Jake, now possessed, escaped that night. He disappeared into the woods, but not before lighting a house on fire. A family of 3 barely escaped alive. Emma, Lena, and Marcus realized the banishment had failed. The medallion wasn't strong enough. There was something missing. Elias's last page held the clue. It cannot be destroyed until the blood of the first breaker is spilled. They didn't know what that meant until they found a photograph from 1956. Mayor Harold Keene, as a boy, standing at the chapel ruins, holding the medallion. Part 20, The Blood Oath. Emma confronted Harold Keene, now dying in a care facility. She showed him the medallion. He wept. "I was the first," he said. "I broke the seal. I offered the first child. They promised to save my brother from illness if I obeyed." His hands shook. "I never thought it would last forever." The ritual required his blood to be spilled, not by murder, but by will. A sacrifice. Harold agreed. As his final breath escaped, the medallion ignited in golden light. The ash ring shimmered. The trap was ready, and the shadow was coming. The hour approaches. The medallion, now pulsing with golden light, was placed back at the center of the ring of ash. The air around it shimmered faintly, and the earth beneath it hummed like a great heart preparing to stop or explode. Emma stood beside the ring, holding Elias Gray's journal in one hand and a flare in the other. The town of Winterwood had emptied, evacuated after a second house burned in the dead of night. Another warning from the shadow. Alex stood silent nearby, his body tense, his mind distant. "It's not coming," he said flatly. "It's already here." And from the woods behind them, fog rolled in, unnaturally fast, impossibly thick. Within it, dozens of glowing eyes began to form. They were not alone. Part 22, The Children of Fog. Shapes began to move within the fog. At first, they seemed human, then not. Children, dozens, pale, thin, and drifting like phantoms. Emma gasped. "Are they real?" Alex whispered. They were. The shadow hadn't just consumed the children. It had turned them into puppets, echoes of the lost. These were the victims, remade as weapons. Jake, still possessed, appeared from the mist. His eyes now glowed the same crimson hue as the shadows. His voice was his, and yet not. "You broke the cycle. Now feel its wrath." The ground beneath the ring cracked open with a deafening boom. Part 23, The Breaking of the Ring. A shadowy claw erupted from the earth and slammed into the side of the ash circle, scattering part of it. The trap was collapsing before it could be fully activated. Emma ran to rebuild the broken line. She dug her fingers into the ash, her lungs choking with smoke. Marcus threw fire around the perimeter to buy time. Alex charged toward Jake, his former friend now possessed, and tackled him to the ground. But Jake was impossibly strong. He grinned, a mouthful of teeth that no longer seemed human. "You're still mine," Jake growled. "You never left." But Alex wasn't the same terrified boy anymore. He punched the Shadow's face with all the fury of 20 stolen years. Part 24. The Return of Elias. As Emma nearly passed out from smoke, a voice echoed from the treetops. "Step back, girl." She turned and saw a man in old miner's clothes descending from the fog. Elias Gray. He was translucent, no longer fully alive, but filled with light. He held a torch that burned with white fire. "You rebuilt the ring," Elias said. "Now let me light it." He stepped into the center, lifted the torch, and plunged it into the medallion. The entire circle burst into flame. A dome of light surged upward, pushing the fog back and sending the Shadow children stumbling. The trap had been reignited. Now it was time to end it. Part 25. The Binding Ritual. The sky over Winterwood turned deep red. Emma and Lena began chanting the words of the final banishment. Each phrase caused the Shadow to recoil in pain. But it fought back, using Jake's body as a vessel. The children screamed, voices of the lost echoing in the night. Some of them began to burn away, their souls freed. Jake clawed at his own skin, trying to fight the possession. Alex held him down. "Come back, Jake," he cried. "You're stronger than it." The Shadow struck Alex with a psychic force that sent him flying. Emma reached the final line of the chant. And then Jake whispered, "Finish it." She did. The Shadow was torn from Jake's body and sucked into the burning ring. Part 26. A Fractured World. But the banishment did not go cleanly. The Shadow's essence shattered, but pieces scattered into the world like burning embers. The children's spirits were freed, rising into the sky like fireflies. Jake collapsed, barely alive. Marcus was missing. The ring was gone. Elias faded, smiling at last. The fog lifted. But Emma knew this wasn't a simple victory. The Shadow wasn't whole anymore, but it wasn't dead either. Something else had begun. Part 27. Winterwood Silence. In the weeks that followed, Winterwood tried to rebuild. Most residents never returned. Those who did refused to speak of what had happened. The mine was sealed permanently with concrete and steel. Emma kept the journal and the fragment of the medallion hidden beneath floorboards. Jake was hospitalized, then moved away with his family. Alex stayed. Winterwood was his ghost, his origin, his unfinished chapter. Emma visited often, but even in silence, they both felt it. Something was waiting, watching. Then, one morning, the fog came back. Part 28. Embers of a Shadow. Children around town began reporting strange dreams of a man with no skin and eyes that bled light. One girl drew a symbol on her wall in red crayon. It matched a sigil from Elias's journal, Fragmented Hunger. Lena called Emma. I think part of the Shadow attached to the children who were near the circle. It seated itself. They weren't finished. The Shadow wasn't bound to one body now. It was bound to many. Part 29. The Marked Ones. Emma and Alex visited each child who had seen the dreams. 6 in total. Each had a strange rash on their arms, shaped like flames curling inward. They began to lose sleep. Their eyes turned glassy. One boy walked into the woods at night, barefoot, and had to be rescued. The group formed again. Emma, Alex, Lena, and a young local deputy named Rhea. They realized the only way to stop this new form was to destroy the Shadow's heart. But no one knew where it was. Until Emma remembered what the Shadow said once. "I am not gone. Only waiting." They needed to return to where it first entered this world. Part 30. The Forgotten Chamber. Deep beneath the town, older than the mine, was an ancient tunnel. It was sealed in the 1800s after a plague. It was said no one survived its final collapse. But Emma and Rhea found the blueprints. It was real. With torches, rope, and trembling resolve, they descended. The chamber was carved with bones, and in the center stood a black tree, withered yet pulsing. Its roots glowed faintly. Its trunk bled darkness. Alex stepped closer. He heard a voice, not outside, but within. "Welcome back." The Tree of Hunger. The tree wasn't made of wood. Its bark was black obsidian, and its surface shimmered as though it were alive, breathing, pulsing, watching. Emma stepped cautiously, her breath visible despite the warmth of the tunnel. The temperature around the tree dropped sharply. Each step felt heavier, as if time slowed in its presence. Alex approached the base and whispered, "This is where it was born." Lena opened Elias's journal to the final, sealed page. Ink bled from the text as new symbols appeared. To kill the root, the marked must bleed beneath its shadow. The children, the 6 marked ones. Part 32, Gathering the Marked. Emma returned to Winterwood and gathered the 6 children who bore the flame-shaped rashes. Their parents protested, but when shown the dreams, the symbols, and the truth, they relented in frightened silence. Each child had begun seeing visions of the tree. It called to them. Emma brought them to the chamber, one by one, under the supervision of Lena, Ria, and Alex. The children weren't afraid. They walked as if guided by something ancient. When they entered the circle of roots, they all began to hum softly in unison. The tree reacted. Its roots snapped upward, trying to grab them. Part 33. The blood ritual begins. Using the enchanted dagger from Elias's journal, Emma performed the ritual. 1 drop of blood from each child placed into a bowl made of stone and ash. The roots recoiled from the bowl's presence. As the last drop fell, the bowl glowed and cracked. Light poured from within. The children fell silent. The tree began to shake. Then it opened. A large fissure split down its trunk, revealing a hollow center. Inside stood a man-shaped creature, twisting in and out of human form. It was the Shadow's original form. Part 34. The Heart of the Shadow. The creature stepped forward, no longer hiding behind illusion. Its eyes were endless pits of flame, its hands skeletal but moving like silk. "You seek to end what cannot die," it hissed. "I am a fear in your silence. I am the voice in the dark." Alex stepped forward, gripping the stone medallion, now cracked but glowing faintly. "You took everything from me. Now I take it back." He hurled the medallion into the hollow of the tree. The chamber erupted in light and fire. The shadow screamed, a sound so loud the earth above cracked. But it wasn't enough. Part 35. The Sacrifice of the First Marked. One child, Lily, stepped forward, her eyes glowing white. "It's not finished," she said calmly. "One must stay to close the gate." Emma screamed, "No, there has to be another way." But Alex understood. The marked children were anchors. The tree could not be destroyed unless one of its vessels gave up their life willingly. Lily smiled softly, stepped into the hollow, and placed her hand on the heart of the tree. There was a blinding flash. The tree imploded in silence. Part 36. After the collapse. The group barely escaped the collapsing tunnel. The wind had changed. The air was fresh again. The children, though crying for Lily, felt peace. In the following days, no more dreams came. The rashes faded. The fog never returned. Winterwood, for the first time in over a century, was truly quiet. Jake returned home with his memories intact, but the possession gone. Alex walked to Lily's favorite tree in the park each morning and sat there silently. Emma published a full report, changed the names of the children, and called it the hunger that waited. The world didn't believe her, but the town did. Part 37. Echoes of the Past. Years passed. Emma became a writer. Alex worked as a counselor for traumatized youth. Lena returned to her university, now considered a folklore authority. Jake became a firefighter. But every now and then, a strange wind would blow in from the north. Not cold, just still. One night, Emma dreamed of Elias Gray. He said one final sentence. "Roots may die, but seeds are patient." She woke in a sweat. Part 38. The New Bloom. In a city hundreds of miles away, a girl named Harper found a strange tree growing in her backyard. It hadn't been there the day before. Its bark was dark. Its leaves were silent. She reached out to touch it. The screen on her tablet glitched. Her dog growled. Her room turned cold. The hunger was not dead. It had only begun again, elsewhere. Part 39. The Watchers. Emma received a letter with no return address. Inside was a photograph of Harper's tree. On the back, written in Elias Gray's handwriting, "You're not done yet. Below the note were 6 symbols, different from before, more complex. Emma pegs Hiopake. She called Alex. It's happening again. He didn't hesitate. Where are we going? Part 40, A Light in the Dark. The final scene takes place on a quiet street, the same street from the photograph. Harper waits outside, alone. Emma and Alex arrive. They kneel by the girl and say, "You don't know us, but we're here to help." In the sky, thunder rolls, but not a storm. A warning. A new cycle is beginning. But this time, the Watchers, those who have fought, survived, and suffered, are ready. As Emma takes the girl's hand and leads her toward the house, a soft glow lights the night. Not from the tree, but from the medallion around Emma's neck, reborn, reforged. The darkness watches, but so does the light. A new seed. In the quiet suburbs of Elmsbrook, Harper sat at her window, staring at the strange black tree growing in her backyard. It hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound, but it felt aware. Each morning she found new symbols etched into the bark, one she hadn't drawn. One day, she discovered her pet bird dead in its cage, feathers scattered toward the window that faced the tree. When Emma and Alex arrived, they immediately recognized the energy. It was a shard of the Shadow's will. But this was different. This one was learning. Part 42, Lena's Warning. Lena called from her university in Massachusetts with grim news. The symbols you sent, they match a pattern of disappearances from the 1870s. There was a town wiped from a map. It began with a tree. She told them of a town named Hollifield, which existed for 11 years before vanishing. All records were erased, all maps reprinted, but a single journal from a priest survived, warning of a silent tree that whispers in sleep. Emma realized Harper's tree was more than a remnant. It was a doorway. Part 43, Echoes in Elmsbrook. Alex stayed up all night near the tree, filming it with infrared cameras. At 2:17 a.m., it moved, not by the wind, but as if stretching. A branch touched the ground, and the grass withered instantly. The next morning, 4 children on the same block complained of strange dreams. One had begun drawing eyes all over her wall. Another spoke in her sleep in a language her parents couldn't understand. Emma knew what came next. Possession, isolation, then disappearance. They had days, maybe hours. Part 44, Through the Veil. Emma and Alex discovered something horrifying. Beneath the roots of the tree was a thin veil of reality. When they cut into the earth, they found nothing. A void, a space where time bent inward. Using a modified version of Elias's ritual, they entered it. Inside was a mirror world, a shadowed version of Elmsbrook. Houses stood, but they were decayed. People were there, but they didn't move. At the center of the shadow town stood a childlike figure. Harper, but she wasn't alone. Part 45, The Hollow Girl. The Harper they saw in the shadow world smiled, but her eyes were glassy, reflecting only darkness. This was not the real Harper. It was a vessel, a prototype of the new entity forming inside the tree. A construct made from Harper's dreams and fears. It whispered, "You cut me once, but seeds grow back stronger." Emma held up the glowing medallion. It flickered. Alex yelled, "You're not Harper, and you never will be." The figure screamed and shattered into smoke. But the shockwave hurled Emma into the void. Part 46, Trapped. Emma woke in the mirror world alone. Time didn't move the same here. She saw flashes of her past. Winterwood, Lily, the shadow. She saw Elias, watching from a cracked mirror, lips moving but no sound. Then she saw something new. Herself, older, standing beneath the black tree, hand in hand with a girl who had no face. The vision faded. She was still inside the veil. Trapped. And the tree outside was still growing. Part 47, The Cut That Bled. Alex, with Lena and Ria's help, returned to Harper's backyard and dug down beneath the roots again. They found Emma's scarf caught in a layer of soft, warm soil, like flesh. The tree was feeding on her presence. Jake arrived unexpectedly, carrying a flare gun and an iron-bound book. "I dreamed this," he said. "I think I'm supposed to help again." They prepared a powerful ritual, one that required wounding the tree itself. Not symbolically, literally. Jake cut the bark. It bled, and Emma screamed from the void. Part 48. Rebirth or Ruin. As the tree bled, the shadow world began to crack. Emma ran through it, chased by faceless children and warped beasts, failed vessels of the shadow's will. Alex reached through the veil and grabbed her hand. She barely made it back, but she returned changed. The medallion around her neck had melted into her skin, becoming a part of her. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. She whispered, "It's trying to become something new, something human." And it was using children's dreams to build a form. Part 49. The Final Bloom. The tree began to sprout fruit, small, red, and pulsing with light. Each one contained a memory from a different child in the neighborhood. Dreams, fears, innocence. If left to ripen, the entity would hatch fully into something neither human nor shadow, but capable of both. Emma made a choice. They burned the tree, not with fire, but with soul light, a final gift from Elias Gray, hidden in the medallion now embedded in her. The tree screamed, the ground split, and everything turned white. Part 50. And it was using children's dreams stood unharmed. The tree was gone. Harper awoke in her bed, her memories wiped clean. The other children slept peacefully. The dream stopped. But Emma, Alex, Jake, and Lena knew the truth. It would happen again, somewhere else, in another form. So they made a vow. They became the Dawn Watchers, defenders of dreams, destroyers of darkness. They didn't know where the next seed would grow, but they would be there when it did. And this time, the dark wouldn't catch them sleeping.